Live now.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, you're live.
All right, Glenn. Thanks for having me on here tonight. I was just for the people listening to this, I was invited to do this call. My name is Jim Porter. Let me start with that. I live in Ridgeway, Colorado. I'm on the western slope, western side of Colorado. And for almost 19 years, I've been fighting government corruption, receiving documents, mostly from courts. Barring me from my day in court, and I've spent millions of dollars and never spent 1 second on a witness stand, and received letters from the Supreme Court that I'll show later with screen sharing, that the state employees don't have to follow the same state statutes the ordinary people are required to follow. And I have that on Colorado Supreme Court letterhead with an ink signature, and we'll get to that later. But anyway, how this call has all started is I have a friend of mine in Livingston, Texas, and he's having problems. And I met with him. I met on the computer years ago, was invited to his home here 3 years ago. And he's been talking to other folks, Glenn included, and I've spoke with Glenn before. And so here we find ourselves tonight with me with an open mic to educate the American people to identify the crime syndicate that's actually in control of this country and not the few honest government employees we think we have. In fact, for the people that are listening to this, I'm going to ask you to just maybe take some notes. I'm going to present too much information here for you to be trying to type in search bars and read small statements. Might be wiser to put that off until after the call. But the two definitions the American people should study, and they're easy, is the definition of the word actually and officially. In a nutshell, actually is the truth, and officially what the government uses in most cases doesn't require the truth to be present. My fight with the government that started on May 15th in 2002 was over the taking of two pieces of private property that I purchased from the state of Colorado, the taking happening at the hands of the city manager and some of his buddies. And my cure was to take them to court. I thought I had access to state court where I could show the documents and the signings, and there was no eminent domain, there was no condemnation, and I would present a couple real estate appraisals to determine the value, and that would be that. Well, it doesn't work that way. So after I investigated this for a while, fought this through the state levels, and because there's illegal search and seizure of private property, the state court was able to get this immediately thrown at the federal level over in Denver, Colorado. And each time one of these things changes venues, you can lose 2 or 3 years of your life waiting for your court date. That's what happened to me. They try to put you off and run you out of money. Now, I spent a few years trying to get it into state court, then have it remanded to the federal court. And when the day before the trial started, the federal judge says I wasn't right because I hadn't taken it through state court. And so back it went. And then the state wrote me a letter saying, well, the federal court didn't have to hear it, so we don't either. So there goes my constitutional right to trial by jury up in a flash. That was their basis for it. So what I did from there was I told that attorney, we'll take this to the appeals court. And then about a year later, I got a letter from the state appeals court that since I never made it to court to get a decision, I had nothing to appeal. So I have one court saying you never made it to court, and I have another court saying I did, and go away. I was collaterally estoppel from ever addressing this again. For years, I chased government documents. I've been to state and federal and county archive storage facilities all over this country. In fact, when I was hosted to Bill's house in Livingston, Texas, I had just finished a trip to Louisiana and Baton Rouge. The day before, I was in Tallahassee. I traveled the Carolinas. I was in Washington, D.C. before I actually was looking for Colorado documents in Wichita, Kansas. For those of you that are interested, uh, Denver used to be in the state of Kansas, actually in the territory. So if you're looking up records for Colorado, you may have to go to Kansas. So because when that was all divided up to prepare for the Civil War, which I'll get to later, some of the Colorado documents are actually located in Kansas. Now, how all of this mess is actually justified by the crime syndicate operating this country today is through what we know is the Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights is unconstitutional, which I will prove to you here in a little bit. I'm in the process of opening tabs and doing some things to get ready for this presentation. But how I prove that is with the crime of treason committed by John Adams, and it was committed on April 21st of 1789, and I'll show you that too. America was first settled. It was first inhabited by the casts off of the British Empire. The British subjects deemed to not be worthy, maybe criminals, maybe people with no title in the 1500s, the 16 and 1700s, people that were put on ships, sent to the east shores of this continent. This is where America came from, the North American continent, and turned loose to find a better life and ultimately still be under the rule of the British monarch, a king in the days of the 1700s. But today, it's actually the monarch is a queen. The rules haven't changed. It's just how they pee. Doesn't matter. Anyway, the 1600s aren't that important. We know the colonists were sick and tired of the British rule. And the early 1700s were more of the same. But when we started into the 1750s, we had educated people, both for and against the British government, that started having debate. The Federalists and the Anti-Federalist papers are written records of these public debates. These were thoughts written by men that were published in different newspapers or maybe magazine articles that were later in the 1820s, if I'm not mistaken, organized into a book, the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist papers. The importance of this was these groups' development before our Revolutionary War, and the thoughts of the people that made up each of these two groups. In fact, ironically, the Federalists actually took that name first and then gave the anti to the other side, and it's really the Federalists that were the criminals working for the British monarch. But basically what happened is these two groups ultimately comprised somewhere around 96, maybe 98% of the members of the the members making up or attending the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia in 1887. The Federalists were, for the most part, probably 90% of their 48%, were title holders. These were people that held a title of nobility issued by the British monarch, which, if you study what a title of nobility is, it's an executive appointment. It makes them an employee of the monarch. These were people that, they didn't like paying taxes, but they worked for the king and they knew the king needed taxes. And so they were trying to write a document they were trying to maintain control of this country. They didn't want control of the land. They were giving that away in large chunks. All they wanted was the right to tax the production. The Anti-Federalists, they're 90 something percent of their 48% of the convention members, the Constitutional Convention members, were honest business people. They were farmers, ranchers if we had them. They were shipping magnates, blacksmiths. They were the people that ran the local businesses, that were the people that provided the grievances found in our Declaration of Independence. There's pocket versions of this. You can read about the usurpations of government and taxation and without representation and quartering troops, without permission. But basically, what led up to the Revolutionary War was the king's treatment, using his titled employees of the ordinary common man that was sent to the American coast to colonize and inhabit this continent. These differences caused a Revolutionary War that basically started in 1775, and 11 months later, our Declaration of Independence was produced. It was distributed to the world as the causes for our separation from the British Empire. These were for non-transient reasons, and it's disclosed in the Declaration itself, issued to the world. I'm pulling up a copy of that right now to refresh my memory. Give me a second. This little history lesson will become important here in a few minutes as the reasoning for why why the Federal Constitution of 1789 actually contains the thoughts and words that it does. A quick review of the Declaration of Independence will actually expose problems the people in 1775 and 76 were dealing with that we are still, as the American people, dealing with today. They were disagreeing with the absolute tyranny over the states. To prove the facts, they submitted to a candid world that he refused his assent to laws and the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He's forbidden his governors to pass law. He's refused to pass laws for the accommodation of large districts of people. He's called together legislative bodies at places unusual, causing extra expense and time to poor innocent people. He's dissolved representative houses repeatedly. He had refused for a long time to allow legislative powers to the people. He endeavored to prevent the population of these states. He made judges dependent on his will. That's a really big one, and it comes up to bite us in the Seventh Amendment, which I'll get to later in the last line of the Seventh Amendment of common law. And just while I'm on that, who makes, where in our Constitution does one man write the rules and issue the punishment? It doesn't exist, yet it happens today. It's not in writing. Anyway, if you start to read all of the grievances listed in the Declaration of Independence, you'll start to understand the subject matter that the two groups of men, the Federalists and Anti-Federalists, were debating when they put together this Constitution. Our war ended in 1783, and they had a Paris Peace Treaty that was kind of the official end. And what resulted was Articles of Confederation. Basically, it was a weak document. The federal government couldn't do much, And one state was putting off onto another state what it didn't want to fund, or what it didn't want to do, or what it didn't want to send people somewhere to get done. One of the things in the Articles of Confederation, though, that made it to the Constitution is found in Article 6. And I'm looking that up right now. There's a little thing in the very first paragraph of Article 6 of the Articles of Confederation. And what this does is it deals with titles of nobility. And for the people that can see this now, maybe that will watch it later, I got this computer set up for screen sharing, and I'm going to show you about titles of nobility. If this is viewable, just do a simple search. Title. Oh, let's do it. Yeah, order of precedence. The order of precedence is the ranking of titles, and we'll just use this top one here. It's real simple. I know people are going to complain that I use Wikipedia. Well, I vetted this page. I have gone through this. In fact, I have a book from the 1600s, the 1700s, and the 1900s on the order of precedence for England and Wales, and nothing's changed. So this is just a quick reference. You can see where I visited this site before. The color's different. Let's click on it again. And this is so very important, because this shows up in our Articles of Confederation and in our Constitution, and is exactly the reason we have criminals in our government today. You can read all of this mess that you want. I'm in England and Wales, this is where our the monarchy comes from. This is where in fact, let me back up real quick. I want to show you something. You see all these different, you got the Thai order of precedence, Swiss, Sweden, South Korea, Spain, all sorts of different countries have an order of precedence. It's a hierarchy of their society. And when our Constitution talks about this, they don't care what country your title of nobility comes from. And we'll get to that later. It means if you have one, you can't work in our government without congressional consent. That's why this is all important. So let me get back to this English thing. In this, what you need to do is you need to discover what the title Esquire stands for. All attorneys use it. In fact, how I got on this little trail is I asked myself a simple question. Why would a perfectly good lawyer join the bar to become an attorney? He can already practice law. He goes to Harvard and he gets his little JD and he can be a lawyer. Why does he need to be an attorney? Well, it's to join the crime syndicate. And that's where I'm going with this. If you read all of this mess, you can see the ranking, the bishops, the gentry, and the lower level judges, and then the other lower ranking, including esquires. This right here damn sure confirms that the title Esquire, held by every attorney in this country through the Bar Association, is an executive appointment from the British monarch. And today, that woman has been on the throne so long, every living practicing attorney today has received his title of nobility from that woman. And it's going to be easily proven. You can contact the United States Supreme Court and get the bar information on anybody that says they're an attorney anywhere in this country. But there's the proof that the title Esquire is a British executive appointment. If you can care to read this, you can see the titles for ladies in the British system. And if you read long enough, you'll find out that the ladies' version of an Esquire is called a handmaiden. Take it for what it's worth. Anyway, back in 1775, the people that were fighting this Revolutionary War were tired of people that thought they were better than others because of some bought title. Started a revolution. And what they were doing is they were getting rid of the influence of these people. And by 1783, there was a peace treaty signed in Paris. But what people weren't paying attention to was the king brought his troops home, but he left his executives on the continent of North America. And to prove that, I'm just going to pull one up, and everybody knows the name John Adams. Here he is. I'm going to show you the document that led to Lincoln's assassination, and if you read the signatures on that, many of those guys were also working for the King of England. But you want to read about this, Cat, you can go down through here all you want, but what I generally do is just go down here to early life and education. Oops, this one, he's got his law practice broken out separately. But you can see where he read the law. He earned his degree from Harvard and was admitted to the bar in 1759. Well, that's under the days of a British king ruling us. He was working for the same king the day he was part of the Bill of Rights in 1791. Here's your evidence. Now, the problem with having federalists in our government representing the king was they were to represent the king and his wishes. They were devaluing the life, liberty, and happiness, peace, and dignity of the American people. What led to our Constitution actually started under the Articles of Confederation. And I'll get back to that. I can't find my little book. Anyway, the Articles of Confederation in Article 6 has a little statement about having a title of nobility. This is amazing. I guess I knocked that book off the table. Anyway, if you read about it in Article 6, they were trying to warn the people, be careful with individuals, American citizens that were also executives and employees of another world leader. In this case, it was the British monarch. That thought actually made it into the American Constitution. The American Constitution was written to strengthen the powers, the authority of the federal government over the Articles of Confederation. And for those that can see my screen, what I do is I use Cornell Law. Now, I'm going to go to the top. I'm going to point out a few things that you folks need to be absolutely careful with. You need to understand that part of this is a lie. And once you remove the lie, the rest you have is the truth. First of all, there's a page for every article. The Constitution has 7 articles. Today, only 6 of them matter. The 7th one dealt with the rounding error or the fractional number for ratification of the Constitution. Once it was ratified, the 7th article has no other business. Now, when you're reading this cotton picking thing, and if you have a pocket Constitution in front of you to open today and follow along, in those booklets, you'll see little asterisks that are little hyphens or designations that something is not original to the Constitution. Well, on this side, what they do is they put the amendments in blue lettering. If you take those out, everything you have left are the original words of the Constitution, which I confirmed in a trip to Washington, D.C. a few years ago, back in 2017, in December and January 2017. So the reason that you have to throw out everything that one of the amendments added was these are 2 standalone documents. You put the dates that they were ratified or the dates that they were added or they were addressed, whatever you want to call it. You put those on a timeline. They happen on 2 different dates. They were 2 different actions. Go with the first one, and I'm going to show you the importance of this. When you honor the federal Constitution and you get to reading it and you throw out everything in blue, you can slide down, you can go through all of this mess. You can talk about their compensation. You can talk about the representatives in the Senate, and you can talk about how things are presented to the president for signature or return, with a veto. You can look at all the things to support and raise armies. You can rules for governing and regulation of the lands and the naval forces. That's all great stuff. But there's a story that Ben Franklin walked out of the convention, Constitutional Convention, and was asked by a reporter what kind of government we were given. And he replied, a republic form if we can keep it. And this is exactly what he was thinking about when he said that. Throw out the blue. This is section 9. This is in Article 1. Each chapter is a section. You can call each paragraph, this thought. It's known as a clause. If you go to the last clause in section 9, the people of the new country of the United States of America were so sick and tired of titled people thinking, they were wooling us around thinking they were better. They came up with a simple solution, and it's these 11 words to start with. No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States. Now, I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit so you know that Mike Pence and Kamala Harris both hold titles of nobility, and since they didn't come from the United States, they had to come from somewhere else. Now, in the years past, I've had people come up with this little thought, well, that's just for the United States. That's for the federal government. Yeah, well, if you look at the next paragraph in Section 10, it says, no state shall enter into any treaty, comma, when you can skip all these other deals to go to the last one, or grant any title of nobility. So right there, you can't get a title of nobility from our federal government nor any state government. So if you've got one, it came from somewhere else. And, like Mike Pence, member of the Illinois Bar, title Esquire, there's the proof he's working for the British Queen. Now, the rub to this whole mess, and I'll guarantee you the Federalists, like John Adams, did not want this in the Constitution, but they couldn't fight it too much and make a big deal about it, because they said, well, they didn't want to be exposed. They just kind of let this one roll off their back, hoping the American people wouldn't realize the seriousness of this clause. And they haven't for almost 231 years until today in this call. Well, what's going on here? It says, no title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding any office of profit or trust under them. Will take a quick detour so that you folks can see. If you type in office of profit, and I use Wikipedia because it's easy to do, it will show you, and these aren't my words, means a position that brings to a person holding it some financial gain or advantage or benefit. It may be an office or a place of profit. If it carries some remuneration, well, the vice presidency carries remuneration, some financial advantage, benefit, etc. It says it's a term used in a number of national constitutions to refer to executive appointments. Well, people, Mike Pence and Kamala Harris have one of these things, and a lot of other people, and Lincoln had them. I'm going to get to Lincoln here in a little bit. But these people are working for a foreign leader. And as such, our Constitution, which I want to go back to right now, says, and no person holding any office of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of Congress. That means there's this little requirement on Kamala. For her to be the vice president, she better have the consent of Congress. If she doesn't, It's a crime of treason. They shall consent of Congress accept any president, emolument, office, or title of any kind whatever from any king, prince, or foreign state. Well, they can say any of these because they know you can't get it from here. Now, you don't think that's a big deal? You're wrong. Did you know every member of our Supreme Court from the day that the first member of justice was seated until today has held a title of nobility from the British monarch, and not one of them has had consent of Congress? So maybe now you might understand why they didn't listen to President Trump's plea to look into election and voter fraud. It's because they were part of it. For them to do anything would actually shine light on their guilt. Now, we've all been raised and heard the term checks and balances. This all sounds like long-haired stuff. It's not. I mean, you take this Constitution apart and you use it a piece at a time before the Bill of Rights. It's the law of the land before the Bill of Rights was added to our backs, and you'll understand that it's not hard to control honest people. It doesn't take many laws. I'll get to that in a minute. But this Constitution actually only contains 3 violations: treason, bribery, and counterfeiting. Today, we only have laws to that. Everything else is a federal code through the British legal system, or a state statute through the British legal system, or a county resolution through the British legal system. You throw all those out, we go back to the Constitution. Murder's not even in there. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to look for some checks and balances. The legislative body can't control the country. That's why we have three branches. If you scroll to the bottom of these pages, you can go back to the preamble. Well, let's go to Article 2, and that has to do with the president in the White House. We don't care about his term, except it says he shall hold his office during the term of 4 years. Did you know that there's nothing in the Constitution that prevents him from having more than 2 terms? I think it's the 25th. Once you throw that out, Trump could have been president for the rest of his life with the blessing of the American people in an honest election. I tried to write him. I was ignored. Here we are today. We've got Biden and Kamala. Anyway, we can read this saying. It talks about together, they shall hold his office for 4 years together with the vice president. How that works is we don't have a party system. The Constitution doesn't require a party system. We go back 2 years and we had 3 or 4 people running for the Republican ticket, and we had 18 or 20. We had a big number running for the Democratic ticket. How this was set up is everybody throws their name in the hat, and the guy that gets the most votes is president, and the guy that gets the second most votes is vice president, and they don't even have to be from the same party. That's fair representation, which we don't have today, and I'm pointing out why. Now, throw out the blue words. You see, we get away from this. Congress may determine the time and choosing of electors. The Electoral College actually saved our butts in 2016, keeping us from having Hillary in the White House, and that's what led to this situation this year. So I received 4 mail-in ballots, and I never even applied for the program. These people were way out of bounds. I didn't realize it was going to get to this point, but since we don't have any law enforcement in my area to report it to, didn't do any good to say anything. I'll just tell you, I did get 4 of them. Throw out more blue. The president shall at stated times receive for his service a compensation. Big deal. It says, though, before entering upon the office, he shall take the following oath. I solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of president, and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Well, folks, I drove to the White House. I was there in December of 17. I was turned away at the gate. There was no list for me to get on. Today, you can call the Who Gives a Shit number to leave a message line. I can give you the phone number to the Secret Service. I tried to warn them before Trump was thrown out of the White House. It doesn't matter. We don't have any representation, and it's because the bar has blocked our avenues. Anyway, Trump did not do his best to preserve and protect and defend the Constitution. If he knew the Constitution, he wouldn't have had Mike Pence on his ticket as an employee of the British Queen. And after their successful placement as president and vice president elect, you can bet your ass he would have had him file for consent of Congress. But Trump doesn't know about this. And I'm not even sure about that. I do know he had a sister that was a federal judge. Maybe he's protecting her and that son-in-law. They're title holders also. I'd like to ask that man some questions. Anyway, we get on down here. It says that the president shall be commander-in-chief of the Army and the Navy and of the militia of the several states when called into actual service. Well, he call them into service. He may require the opinion in writing of principal officers. Well, being the commander-in-chief of the Army and the Navy, he can make a criminal complaint of treason to his generals to call a tribunal to hear the charges and see the evidence. That's what I was trying to get him to do. We can stay outside of the Article 3 courts, our Supreme Court, which is all title holders. All of our federal judges are all title holders. All of our state judges are title holders. All of our prosecutors, the entire Department of Justice that are attorneys. There's like 18,000 of them in Washington, D.C. They're all employees of the British Queen. Why do you think nothing's ever happened? Why Hillary and others that we have evidence on have never been brought to trial? Trump could have changed that. We can read where he has the power to fill up all vacancies. He could convene the Congress. He could present the charges to his military officers, have these criminals. Ted Cruz is one of them from Texas. He's an attorney. Have him arrested. Once they get him proven guilty, Trump can fill up the vacancy. You see that during the recess of the Senate? He only gets to grant a commission that expires at the end of the next session. He could have had honest people in there, but he didn't know the Constitution. And all of this is going to be important for the what I was talking to Bill about and some other subjects. Let me keep on with our history. He shall from time to time give information of the State of the Union. He could have gone to a State of the Union address and had 60% of the members of Congress in attendance arrested by military officers and tried for treason. That would have shaken things up. He can, in case of disagreement between the houses with respect to time of adjournment, he may adjourn them at such time. He shall receive ambassadors, other public ministers. He shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Well, treason is a tough deal. If you're guilty of it, you sure don't want it exposed. If you read about this, it says the president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. Well, these terms that Nancy Pelosi was using are actually not defined because since 1789, we've had attorneys signing legislation. So when we prove their guilt of treason and we throw out everything that they did, we go back to the original Constitution, and there's two of the three deals: treason and bribery. That's all we got. Now, that's good because treason is the crime of a citizen, a warlike act against their country, or somebody giving aid and comfort to another guilty of treason. Well, since Kamala Harris is guilty of treason, which I can damn sure prove with Congressional Archive documents, or actually what's not there, when Biden put her on the ticket and helped her get elected to the presidency of the Senate, he's guilty of aid and abetting. If Trump knew all of this and brought it up to the people, he might not have been evicted from the White House. Now, I'm going to go ahead and speed this up a little bit. I've been here for about 40 minutes. I want to go to, well, part four of or part three is the judiciary. I can prove every single member of the Supreme Court is guilty of treason. So I'm going to skip by this. Until we get honest people in there, we don't actually have to worry about the Article 3 courts. We all know how bad things happen there. We start to mess around in number four, full faith and credit, big deal. Citizens are entitled to privileges and immunities of the several states. Person charged in any state. No, that's not important to what we're doing. Talks about new states admitted. Well, this is what was part of what generated this evening's presentation. I had this friend of mine in Livingston, is a citizen of Texas. I was showing him why Texas isn't actually a state. Remember the terms actually and officially? Yeah, the documents that brought Texas in as a state were signed by title holders. So when you throw those out, Texas is actually still a free and sovereign nation. And that's what he was trying to explain to Glenn here. And so Glenn gave me all of this time to bring up the law of the land and actually expose the crime syndicate causing all of our problems. We don't care about dispose of needful rules, throwing out stuff, it says the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republic form of government. Well, that's by representation. We're not a democracy, folks. If you'd studied the term democracy, you'll see it's one step away from an oligarchy. In a representative form of government, there will be a majority, and that majority gets to dictate what happens to all men equally, men and women and kids. You may be part of the 49% group, but you're treated exactly the same as all members of the 51% group. Those things can change back and forth, but the majority doesn't get to steal, rape, and pillage the minority. That's a democracy when the minority is railroaded. We are guaranteed a Republican form of government. Pull up the word, study that, see how, and then look at the difference in that and democracy and oligarchy. And you'll see that, when you're listening to the radio and you hear these attorneys in their speak, in their opinion, you'll understand that we're being lied to. And if we go back to the law of the land, we can actually fix our current situation. As for the law of our land, let's get back to this Constitution. Article 5 allows for amending. Technically, an amendment is just an alteration. The general consensus taught in our schools is that the day this document was written, it didn't deal with subject matter 200 years later. We have electricity, we have internal combustion engines. We have a lot of things that are different. But one of the things the Constitution also does is it prevents criminals from doing the altering. And this is where the tire is going to meet the road. People like Ted Cruz and Bill Clinton, he was the title holder. Richard Nixon was the title holder. President Abraham Lincoln was the title holder. President John Adams was the title holder. I don't care who you pick. Mike Pence, Kamala Harris. I don't know if his name was Obama or not, but that the guy we had in the White House for 8 years. Our Constitution protects us from known criminals. They have to warn the Congress that they're working for a foreign leader. And then if they get consent, they can go ahead and be inaugurated. But none of these people have that. Yes, alterations are constitutional. But what's not constitutional is alterations by criminals guilty of treason. And I've shown you where treason is actually in the is in the Constitution. One of the things I forgot to show you guys in Article 3, though, and we'll just slip down here to it real quick, is the definition. It says Congress shall have the power to declare the punishment of treason. Well, see, treason's down here in Section 3 of Article 3. right here. And this is original text. This isn't blue letters. It says, shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. Well, folks, I promise you, being a criminal and taking root in our government and then altering our law of the land is a warlike act. Okay? That's why the people like Cruz and Obama do not want, they never mention treason. They never mention anything they can also be guilty and convicted of. All right, back to Article 5. We can amend this a couple different ways. We can do it at the federal level. We can do it at the state legislative levels. It doesn't matter. 60% of all of our federal and state legislatures, approximately, it could be a little more than this, are guilty of treason. So we really don't want an Article 5 convention right now, because if they ever get that, and they're just a few states short, first thing they're going to do is alter that Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8, and they're going to take that little thing for congressional consent out. Now, technically, it'll be done by criminals, and we'll still have a chance if we want to fight it out. And I'll get to that in a minute, but it'd be like the South trying to fight the North. The Civil War was an intentional act. It was done to cover a constitutional amendment added in 1812 that the attorneys were trying to hide. And I have law books that show it in place. Well, the South, they were trying to secede, and the North jumped on them and wouldn't let them leave. And so if we're not careful, our federal government will jump on us again, and we'll have us another civil war. So this isn't what we do, but it's how we do it. And we need to put a big enough group together, and we need to educate our friends and family so that we can all come together and demand and establish the place of the law of the land, our federal constitution. I'm going to go here to Article 6. If you don't think this thing is important, read this a couple times. It's only 3 paragraphs. We don't care about any debts before the adoption of this Constitution. Okay, we'll pay them. Big deal. But it says this Constitution and the laws of the states which shall be made in pursuant thereof. Laws, not legal codes. Laws. Laws put by honest men in our legislatures that are not employees of the British monarch. Those are laws. Shall be made pursuant thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. This is it. This document is our law. Everything that's been added that was done by an attorney working for the British monarch that gets thrown is not law. That's why they call it legal. And it says, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in this Constitution or laws of the state to the contrary notwithstanding. You see where the judges have to play by this? Well, how is John Roberts, head of the grand poobah of our Supreme Court, and he doesn't have the required consent of Congress? Answer that one. I'd like to have him answer it before a military tribunal. It says also that the senators and representatives before mentioned and the members of the several state legislatures, you see where this is going to tangle up everybody? And all of the executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, well, that even will tangle up your county commissioners, folks, because they are mentioned in your state constitutions, and they are all executives. You got that? Your court, your county attorneys, all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states. And I'm going to show you how we still only have 13 states. The other 37 haven't been properly placed. So we got another argument about that, another issue to deal with. Shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. Well, as soon as they swear to support this Constitution, the first thing they need to be able to prove is the consent of Congress for being a title holder and elected or appointed to a government position. If they don't have it, they are guilty of treason. We throw them in jail, we impeach them, remove their name off the door, and we replace them with honest people. That's how we fix this. We all know about no religious test shall ever be required. I go with that one. It's not important to me. We're not to the part where a religious test ever created a problem. You see these people, how we have the law of the land, how all of our executive and judicial officers, along with all senators and representatives before mentioned, shall be bound by oath to support this Constitution. This is what gives this document teeth. They swear it, they have to do it. And we'll get to this little 7 just so that you see the ratification of 9 states shall be sufficient. Well, when you divided 13 by 3/4, it had a decimal. They took care of the decimal and rounded down to 9 states. Once this document was ratified and became the law of the land, Article 7 has no bearing on any other subjects. All right. That's a 45-minute review on a document that'll take you about 45 minutes to read. And I even added in a couple little word searches, Office of Profit and some things to help you understand this. The reason this document is so important, and we're going to get back to old John Adams. Most folks have never studied this cat. It's kind of like the victor gets to write the history and nobody actually looks at the facts. Well, the one thing about it is, John Adams had a little problem. And this is why every single attorney that's ever worked in any of our government positions has never been able to have the consent of Congress required for being a title holder, because they all have to operate in like manner. If you find one that's an anomaly to the group, people will start asking questions. Why is that guy different than the others? So they make them all the same. Well, if you read about this guy, and I'm not going to waste all your time because you can do it yourself. Whoops. Every one of these pages in Wikipedia has a kind of a table of contents. If you go down to his inauguration, anyway, let's just take a quick look. Anyway, if you read about some of this mess, you're going to see who swore this guy in by Chief Justice Oliver Ellsworth. You see where this guy was a lawyer? He was actually an employee of the King of England. He was guilty of treason. When you throw him out, technically, the highest office that this John Adams attained was Vice President-elect. The guy, this Chief Justice, should not have been in his office. He shouldn't have been at the swearing in. Anyway, if you continue to read this thing, and these articles do change, people edit them and move things around back and forth, you'll find out that our government actually started on, and I don't see where it's at right now, on April 21st of 1789. Let me see if I can find it. What happened is our government was supposed to start on March 4th of 1789. That's not the right 1789. But they had a little problem, and the problem was John Adams. Actually, they had several problems, but he was the one that was most exposed. And this is the problem that is still going on today. When I mentioned Mike Pence and come over there a little bit ago, these people are employees of the British Queen, and they don't have consent of Congress. Actually, if you and what's funny is the Freedom of Information Act is technically unconstitutional, but it's one thing that the government does follow. So they'll send you, that you'll get a reply, no document found. But anyway, back in the day, is the very first vice president that would have called to order the very first meeting of the United States Senate. John Adams, as vice president, was required to have consent of Congress. Well, how did he get it before he was ever in a position to call the very first session into order to be granted the consent? This is what caused this stalemate for a month and a half in the starting of our country. It didn't start on March 4th. It started on April 21st of 1789. These people were trying, these Federalists were trying to figure out, okay, we got the guy elected. Now, how do we get him into office without being caught? Well, finally, they just decided to do it and hope nobody was paying attention, which turned out to be the case like today. Nobody was paying attention a week ago tomorrow when Kamala Harris was inaugurated. The first thing they should have done is we need to see your consent of Congress because you're employee of the British Queen. Well, I don't have it. Well, then you need to get off the stage and we're going to have to inaugurate somebody else. That hasn't happened. Anyway, this thing about Adams, there is no procedural way that he could have received this consent until the very first Congress was opened. And as the vice president and head of the Senate, he couldn't open. This is why Ben Franklin said, if we can keep it, what happened is the Anti-Federalists actually gifted us a protection that if we used it during the first legislative sessions and then followed these rules, the law of the land, for every election in the history of this country, we would have never had an attorney in a public office. Today, we have about 1.2 million of them in public office. See the problem? Sorry if you're related to one, if one of them's your kids, but, it's like Trump and his son-in-law. The truth sucks sometimes. Now, to point out the true problems that we have today, what I've done is proven how the law of the land was violated, but let me show you the Bill of Rights. If you remember earlier, I made a comment that they are unconstitutional. Well, I don't have this in my computer. I actually don't have it in my hand. I didn't realize I was going to, what was going to happen tonight. But if you get a hold of the United States Printing Office, you can have a certified copy sent to you of the Bill of Rights. And on it will have the signatures of all the people that signed it. In a quick review of that, you will find names. And if you search those names, you'll find their title holders. And then if you ask for their congressional consent that they don't have, you throw the Bill of Rights out. That's technically why the Bill of Rights is unconstitutional. But understanding why the Bill of Rights was added is the trick to this whole problem-solving thing that we need to go through. The Bill of Rights was a group of thoughts that were debated for quite a long time. You can see where they were started a few months after our country's inception, and they weren't actually placed in detail December 15, 1791. Well, it just so happens old John Adams was still the president of the Senate when all of this happened. Look for his signature. The problem with this Bill of Rights, and I'm gonna actually use this Cornell Law page to show you this. It's easier to follow. Nowhere in, and I'm going to just go through these real quickly. It's this First Amendment. They're not bad thoughts. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that we shouldn't enjoy free speech and the right to assemble. What I'm saying is the document is unconstitutional. It's got many good thoughts in it, but it's got a couple in one that is absolutely detrimental to ordinary American people, and it's got another one that doesn't have any teeth. It says the Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or the exercise thereof or abridging free speech. Well, where in the Constitution that I just showed you did it say anything that the government is in control of all religious activities or the people's right to free speech or press or to peacefully assemble? What we did not give to the government cannot give back. This is a moot point. It has no bearing on the people in our law of the land. We can say and do anything we want as long as we don't hurt another individual. We don't need the First Amendment. But if we take that to the next level, we'll go to the Second Amendment. Boy, this is one of all of my guy friends are hoorah on. The well-established regulated militia. Okay? It shall not be infringed the right to keep and bear arms. Well, where did we give gun rights to the federal government or our state government? We didn't. We were a nation of men created equally by our God with inalienable rights. And when we wrote the Constitution, we gave a few authorized duties to our elected representatives. We didn't give them the guns. We didn't give them the right to keep them or bear them. Now, they can call them militia, but that's of American men, American people that are armed. We bring the guns with us. That's how this was all set up. So basically, the Second Amendment is part of a group of unnecessary thoughts. One of them is detrimental. I've tried to point this out to the NRA so that they can actually represent what's going on. If they ever solve the problem, their membership would go away and they go broke, and these guys, they couldn't go to Africa and hunt. Let's keep going here. We go to the Third Amendment. It talks about quartering, soldiers. Big deal. This one here, it doesn't happen. It was, it happened before the Constitution. It never happened after the establishment of the Constitution in 1789. It really is, it's an okay thought. Don't do it. But it's not happened, so we don't need to prevent anything. If we go with the fourth, this is the one that got my tail all twisted up. Let me let this computer react. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable search and seizure shall not be violated. I have receipts where I bought 2 properties from the state of Colorado, and I have documents where my city government took them from me. So I'll promise you this Fourth Amendment is crap. It does not exist. I have statements from federal and state judges at the appellate levels and the regular levels and the Supreme Courts that these people they can make up rules as they go. They don't have to follow state statutes. And I guarantee you, I've got the canceled checks to prove that I paid for property. So there's this thing doesn't work. And no warrant shall, but upon a probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be secured and the person or things to be seized. Well, this is all crap, British legal crap. That what it does is it helps support attorneys and create cases to be brought before judges guilty of treason. It's what they call money in motion. Technically how this should work is if I find some of my stuff in the neighbor's yard, I go to the sheriff, he arrests the guy, we have us a little trial amongst a jury of our peers, and we have a judge as a moderator, and, the jury makes a decision. I don't know in this thing, it doesn't say anything about who describes the place to be searched. That's the fallacy of the fourth. We go on to the fifth. Not particularly interested in this one. It doesn't affect anybody that I know. It shall be, no person shall be held for answer for a capital crime. This is like the double jeopardy deal. Big deal. If you convict him, you convict him. The way it was is if you found new evidence, you could bring him back to court. These are all issues I think the American people should address today. After all of this is thrown out, maybe we want to have something that leaves us in here. I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just telling you in its current form, it shouldn't be there. Let's, where am I? I was trying to find the Seventh Amendment. Where in the world does it go? Fifth Amendment. Up. Let's see what happens. I'm going to go to the 7th. This is the one that I've been trying to get to anyway. Okay. Where did I? Oops, that's not what I'm looking for. Sorry, folks. Damn it. This gave me Article 7. I'll get there in a second. All right, 6, 7. Get past the signers. We'll go to the Bill of Rights. Let's go straight to the 7th Amendment right here, not the 7th article. Okay, it says it suits in common law. Well, if you'll read the Constitution a couple or three times, nowhere in that will you see the words common law. Today we have people bandy that around, thinking that we need our common law courts. Well, let me tell you, folks, that's what's killing us. And the people that demand common law actually don't understand what's going on. So let me show you. Common law Wikipedia. And this can be confirmed in so many ways. Wikipedia is correct. It says in law, well, the British are liars. I'm just going to say it like it is. They use the terms law and legal interchangeably when they're not. Look up the definitions of both. It says in law, common law, see where they change it in the first 4 words. Also known as judicial precedents or judge-made law. Well, now, where in our Constitution does anybody in Article 3 get to make a damn law? See the problem? See why the Supreme Courts wouldn't address Trump's concerns about election fraud? They were doing what was best for the Bar Association. It says it's the body of law created by judges and similar quasi-judicial tribunals. Where does that show up in our law of the land? It doesn't. And you continue to read about common law as it arises as precedent. Well, see, this is the thing about all men are created equal. It doesn't. I'm not ruled over by what somebody did yesterday. What it is, it's the legislative body saying what's right and wrong, and our executive agreeing to it, and then making this a law. The judge doesn't get to massage it a little bit, make it better for his neighbor versus his, cross-town opponent. It's the same for everybody. All men are created equal. And in a representative form of government, even though the majority gets to make the rules, the minority doesn't get messed over and gets to enjoy the same successes as the minority. It says, you can read all of this mess, guys. Just write down common law Wikipedia. But what you're going to do is you're going to see also so named because of it was common to all king's courts across England. This is the tied to the British monarch. Okay. Originated in the practices of the courts of the English king. I am not kidding about this. Educate yourself and tell your friends. This is actually a very boring read, but it exposes our problem, that once we can take care of the problem, we can just forget about this forever, never let it happen again. And there we go. Now let's get back to this little 7th Amendment. It says, in suits at common law, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, if you read Article 3, we are guaranteed a jury trial, but we don't have to exceed a $20 limit. The properties that I bought from the state were worth a hell of a lot more than $20. Yet under the rules of common law, I didn't get my trial. I didn't get one by a judge. I didn't get one by a jury. But it says the right by trial by jury shall be preserved. Well, I got documents to the contrary. In fact, what's funny is I went ahead and brought some of these things up. Let me see if I can, where I put those. Well, let's just do them again. This is Arnie's. This is Arnie Rossner. He passed away a couple years ago. I was sending him stuff. This is a statement from our Attorney General back in the day, John McCain. He returned evidence as a member of the Senate Committee for Homeland Security and Government Affairs. He turned his back on the corruption, but this was a document. Now, this is a hand scan deal. It's a little crooked because of the hand scanner, but I got the original copy. See the blue ink signature? This is from this James Coyle. He's the most powerful individual in the state of Colorado back in 2013. Let me raise this, expand this just a little bit, but too much. It says this office is not various to the open records requirements. Well, what makes his office special and different from others? But see where he received my request for information. It says, nevertheless, I'm providing you the following information. It says this office is not subject to the various open records set forth in the Colorado statutes. This is absolute crap. All men are created equal. The government doesn't get to play by rules that I don't get to enjoy. Well, that's not the way the Constitution was written. So you guys can take this for whatever it's worth, but I will promise you, as you see this hand signature, get rid of this. That is the most powerful man in the state of Colorado working for the Supreme Court. And what it is the Attorney Regulation Council. I was asking for information on this, on a man that represented me. And then after a couple $1 million said, well, sometimes the little guy just gets screwed, and turned around and walked away. What happened is I was going to bring this man to bear for his errors and omissions policy. He wouldn't. This man's name was Don McBee, my attorney. This guy says, yeah, all he has to do is write us a letter and say he's insured that he has the requirements. See, but he doesn't have to prove it. So you can't even sue an attorney. Let's get back to this other mess, though. You find where I'm at. Anyway, it says the right to trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise reexamined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law. Folks, the Bill of Rights is a group of multiple. They tried to get 12. I think there was at one time 17 proposed amendments. They pared it down to 12 or 13. It came back as 10, known as the Bill of Rights. It is this last statement after this comma is the entire reason for the Bill of Rights. The British king gave up in 1783. He withdrew his troops and he left men like John Adams behind to deal in the matters of our American government, and to, by the act of treason, alter our law of the land and return it back to the rules of the British king. Remember, I just showed you a minute ago the Wikipedia deal, rules of the king. We were a free nation from 1789 to 1791, and then everything reverted back to the way it was. This is exactly the reason Mike Pence and Kamala Harris, Abraham Lincoln, Richard Nixon, John Kennedy was an attorney, so we're both of the Clintons, but Bill Clinton is our attorney. Obama was an attorney. This is exactly what allows these people to gain entrance and protection and to stay away from Article 1 requirement of congressional consent. Now, one of the things, I think I've beaten that horse to death. You got an idea on what's going on. You can find this on YouTube and watch it again later. Let's shorten this up a little bit. What I did is I pulled up some documents that I've found over time. I wanted to show you guys this one. This is actual evidence of why Lincoln was assassinated. This is a copy of the original one. They made several of these copies. They didn't have Xeroxes, so they had people that would sit down and handwrite these, and then add the signatures were added later. What I'm trying to do is get a little more magnification. I'll move it left and right as I want. Come on. Okay. What this is what it was known as the 13th Amendment. Now, if you go back in 1865, there was actually already a 13th Amendment. It was added in 1812. It was called the Titles of Nobility Amendment. And what it was saying is if you had a title of nobility, you ceased to be a citizen of the United States. Well, under those rules, which are unconstitutional, to protect the attorneys, how was Lincoln an attorney, not a citizen of the United States, yet president of the United States? And here's his signature on this particular document. Okay, right here, dated April 1st, 1865. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered. Now, it doesn't matter what the answer is. But if you read this is a resolution that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude. This is the 13th Amendment. This is the original wording in the original penmanship, attested to by the Secretary of the Senate, all of these different high-powered people, and it was proposed in the Senate on April 8th, 1864. It started in 64. This is a list of all of the men, there was 38 yeas, 6 nays. These are the men that approved, that adopted for ratification the 13th Amendment. Now, that's just in the Senate. If you go with the House of Representatives, it goes from the Senate. It was given to these yahoos. They argued and discussed. They took vacations. They had Christmas. I don't know what they did. But by January 31st of 1865, there's the date. And you can read quite a few of these names. And I've investigated several of them, and they're all bar members. What happened was right down here, and it's hard to read, but it's 119 yeas and 56 nays were recorded. What's funny is in Article 1 under the legislators in the Constitution, it demands everything that our legislative bodies do be entered into a journal, but not all of it published if deemed necessary for secrecy. That's why you can't find anything about this consent of Congress. They try to hide it. The clue is what's not there. It's like a driver's license. You get it, the cops pull over a 15-year-old man and he says, I don't have one. He's convicted on what he doesn't have, not on what he did, on what he has. It's like these guys. You don't have it, you're guilty. Anyway, you go back to this whole mess. What happened is Lincoln was the first candidate sponsored by the Republican Party, started in 1854. He was promoted to be the president of the United States by the Bar Association. Now, we didn't have an American Bar Association until the 1870s. He was promoted, and that's the thing about Adams. When it says he was admitted to the bar in 1759, it was the International Bar Association located in London, England. You can just do an easy search on that. It'll tell you all about it. Just look for the International Bar. Abraham Lincoln was a member of the International Bar Association located in London, England. He didn't have the consent of our Congress. But what happened is when he got this amendment, he became worthless. Actually, if you look at the dates on this, he was shot in the back of the head somewhere about 45 days later. It was actually 43 or something. But yeah, he became useless to the bar. And he might have felt some reservations and wanted some things changed. But anyway, he was a short timer as soon as he signed this document. Um, I just had a thought. Now I've lost it on what I wanted to show you next. What I was going to do is show you a situation of treason and fraud as an example. Several years ago, I had this guy tell me somebody found these old cool books here in our county library, law library. They were going to throw them away. Well, I went down there and I said, hey, give me that. And this is it. What this is, for you people to understand, Colorado was a territory until 1876, and it got statehood. It was actually a territory in 61. But what this is this is an original copy from 1868. It's an old leather-bound deal, and this is the state statutes that were used to rule the people. Let me show you some other stuff here. Inside of this book, let me see if this is the right way. It's not the right set of documents. Whoops. I guess I made a mistake there. Let me back up. Come on. Pictures, the book. Sorry about that, folks. What I'm trying to do is get to these internal pages. The reason that this book is so valuable is it contains the true version of the United States Constitution in 1868. Computer's acting a little slow. Maybe I got too much open here. Let me close some stuff. No, that can't be it. Let's do this again. All right. And I just happen to know it's somewhere around in this area in the book. What I did is I took this hand scanner and I just ran it down the pages. But what this is these are the amendments to the Constitution in 1868. You can read them today. It doesn't really matter. They're the same deal until you get to this one right here. Now it's on 2 pages, so I'm going to have to show you 2 different deals. But you see where in 1868, there was this, if any citizen of the United States shall accept, claim, or receive or retain any title of nobility or honor or such, or shall without the consent of Congress. See where that comes up again? That's how important it was. Accept or retain any president, pension, office, or emolument of any kind whatever from any emperor. Well, now let me go to the next page, guys. Okay. Now, this is the next page. It finishes 13. It says, any king, prince, or foreign power, such persons shall cease to be a citizen of the United States and shall be incapable of holding any office of profit or trust under them or either of them. Okay. What that means is if you got a title of nobility, you're not a citizen. And then the Constitution demands that you have to be a citizen. And for different offices, if you have to be a citizen for different required amounts of time. Well, how in the hell was Lincoln the president if he wasn't a citizen of the United States as of this? Well, this was actually entered, and they tried to hide it just in case an attorney was brought up on treason. He could use it as get out of jail free card. But the plot thickens because right here, you remember when Lincoln added, and I just showed you the picture, when Lincoln added the 30, signed the third, by the 38th Congress, this Article 13 of slavery. Well, the question then becomes, let's see, right here. Why is it the 14th Amendment? You see how constitutional fraud by the attorneys is evident all the way back in through the history of our country, where it says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except as a punishment for crime. You see that? Pull out your hippy-dippy your pocket Constitution right now, and you'll find that in the 13th position. But there is no congressional document trail changing its position. How did this one just disappear? Well, this is the fraud and the treason of the title holders in our government today. The reason that this call kind of got started was this friend of mine in Livingston, Texas, Bill. I was showing him and explaining to him why he's part of a group of people living in Texas, thinking that Texas needs to be an independent nation again. I told him, I said, well, you're absolutely correct, but you don't understand what the reasoning is. I told you that I had driven down to his house in December it was just before Christmas here a few years ago. Well, the next day, what I did is I ran over, and he lives, I don't know, 120 miles east of the state capital, and I was headed that way anyway. So, darn thing. What I did is I zoomed on over there, stopped 30 miles out of town and picked up another friend. Let me see if I can find this. I think it was this right here in 17, yeah. Maybe late November. Whoops. Wrong picture. Come on. All right, let me find it, guys. Appreciate you hanging in there with me. Where is that book? Maybe it's right here. There they are. This is a set of pictures that I put on an iPhone. I'm just going to kind of open these up and let you guys see. I was in Florida. I was in the state of Louisiana. Louisiana is important to the fraud because of the Louisiana Purchase, and they're joining the state, getting statehood in April of 1812. So their law books actually become very important in the history of this country. But what I was doing is I was in Louisiana, and this progression of documents, I was just kind of, what I'm doing is I'm snapping pictures so that I can prove that pages existed. But what I did is I actually got into this book, and this is the Law of Texas, Volume 2 of 1846. It's important because it kind of matches this book, The Laws of Texas in 1845. This is the first year of Texas statehood. Inside this book, it has a copy of the Constitution, which is kind of the same as the one in Colorado. It doesn't have the amendment that Lincoln signed in it, but it has that cease to be a citizen one in it. But what this is this is the laws of Texas. If Texas is a member of the Union, what's required to be on file is the Enabling Act. Every state, after the original 13 that was admitted by an act of Congress through an Enabling Act, enabling them to join the Union. When I was down there with my friend, I was holding these books, taking pictures of these catalog numbers, which was so vitally important. Nobody really got the point. In fact, what I was doing, and you can see it in this picture, it's big enough, I was actually putting my thumbprint on certain pages documenting which one it was, so that later on, if I could raise my thumbprint off it, I can prove it was the book that I had in my hand. This could be used as evidence in a trial of treason against, like Ted Cruz and their Governor Abbott down there. This is some very heady stuff. But what I was doing is I was down there photographing these books. I showed these to my friend Bill, who got with other men in the state of Texas, and that all kind of led to this call. Something about me knowing a little bit about the Constitution and how it's been violated, and why the people need to organize in a group behind one single thought, and the thought is treason. What we have to do is demand the exposure, the trial for, and the conviction of treason found in our law of the land. What I've done is I've gone over the thing a little bit. I've told you a little bit about our history and how things got into the Constitution. People were tired of the king telling them what to do, and so they instituted a government where all men were equal. He was the head of the group because of his hereditary background. It doesn't matter who your daddy is in this country; all men are equal. Well, what happened is we ended up with a government that lasted until 1791, when John Adams, a title holder, switched us back under common law. In 1812, the Titles of Nobility Amendment was added. In my computer, I have a letter from John Quincy Adams, a copy of a letter that, let me see if I can find it here real quick, about his opinion here, John Quincy letter in 1818. This establishes this document back to 1818 when I actually know it's from 1812. Now this is it's a different text, but this is the words. And then there was this letter down here, the original document, and a certified picture. Let me keep going. This is in the handwriting of John Quincy Adams. This is discussing in 1818, on March 21st, this Titles of Nobility that ultimately led to the Civil War. What this was is there was a shipping captain. His name was Charles Buck. This is his name up here. And he traveled around the Atlantic, delivering goods from New England to England, down to France, back into the Caribbean, for the molasses and the sugar cane, and back up to the Carolinas for cotton. His boats made this circuit. Well, he had been offered a title of nobility by somebody, and I don't remember who it is. Well, he was using John Quincy Adams, Esquire. John Quincy Adams had to look into this, and so this was the letter that he wrote. Give me time to look into it. This is the later letter that he sent. I have had the honor to receive your letter and this is all the names, December 2nd. And let me find it down here. Okay, and by the acceptance of such an appointment from any foreign government, a citizen of the United States ceases to enjoy that character. Well, here's the deal. It's known to have been in existence. This is John Quincy Adams, he was the Secretary of State back then, a future president of the United States, admitting that an amendment is present then that doesn't seem to exist today, with no congressional paperwork document trail to show where it was repealed, like the prohibition on liquor. All these problems that I mentioned to you tonight, I'm going to kind of wind this up. I mean, I can beat a dead horse for so long, and people get tired. Every single problem you've ever had with the government probably revolves around the actions of an attorney. I've proven attorneys are esquires. I have proven that the through the order of precedence that they have an executive appointment from the British monarch. I've proven that these people have to have consent of Congress to hold their government position. And so why do we have them there? I've shown you almost a 231-year history of this country. In all but 3 of those years, we've been under the rule of common law. Everything we've done today, that we have going on today, is actually a replay. This election thing is maybe to a more heinous level, but once we get the people that shouldn't be in our government on a witness stand and ask them for the document required by the law, we can remove these people. We can put them in prison. We can, per the Constitution, then start the impeachment proceedings. That's where Nancy Pelosi's full of crap, folks. Trump hasn't been convicted of anything. If you read anywhere I showed you impeachment upon conviction, I don't know why he wasn't promoting that. It's like he'd never read the Constitution. But I'm going to tell you, you can't impeach. You can impeach. It's just official paperwork process of getting the name off the door so you can put somebody else in there. Glenn told me we could open this up to people that had comments. I've got all evening long. If you want to, if anybody wants to type it, I don't know how the questions will be presented, but I'm going to let Glenn step in here and see if we need to end this call or take some questions. Glenn? Well, doesn't seem like much going on. I got a question here, folks, from an Andrew McFadden. I would love to hear about what happened. What happens to someone when they travel to federal lands, Puerto Rico or Washington, D.C.? Well, let's see here. I don't understand the importance of this question, so let me continue to read. I think everybody can see this over here in the upper left hand. It says, does anything happen to their status? I don't know. Maybe this Andrew McFadden is asking about their status of citizenship. I want to know why Congress thinks the people in the territories don't have all their constitutional protections or rights. Well, 60% of the people in Congress are guilty of treason. So listening to them as a body is probably not the wisest thing to do. While I'm at this, you guys, here, I want to show you something. Let's see. There's a website. It's called Open the Books. OpenTheBooks.com. Let's see right here. I want to show you something. This gentleman that asked this question, Andrew, and I made a comment about 60% of the members of Congress, and this is at the federal and state levels, are guilty of treason. If you're worried about what Congress has to say, I think we need to clean up Congress, and how we do that is we expose their treason. Well, if you go to this OpenTheBooks.com, this was done by a guy, Andrew Janiczeski, and you can read all about him. He's a pretty cool guy. But what you can do is you can go into these maps and you can start clicking on jurisdictions. And what you can do is you can find the name and location by office and the salary of every single government employee out there. You can go to the state or federal or county level. And you can investigate, say, the Department of Justice or your legislative body. It'll give you the name of the person holding the office and their salary and everything else. This guy takes government payroll information and adds it to his website as it becomes available. What he's got in this website is a staggering amount of information. You can see Florida inspectors and federal grants in Texas. These are just some of the highlights. But if you learn this website and you want to scroll around and you want to take a look at some, let's see what this in reports. What you can do is you can actually expose anybody in any position. This website changes over time, and I don't visit all that much until it's important. But you can actually enter a zip code in here and find out if learn the identities of all the government employees in that zip code. Now back to this question this gentleman was asking, and I made a comment about the Congress. I'm not sure about your question of the status. It says inhabitants of a territory becoming citizens. Well, there's two different statuses in my understanding of territory and state, and they're completely different. Territories don't have voting rights, and states do. It's all in the Constitution. As far as your individual status, let me see here. Swear an oath to uphold the Constitution. Citizens swear an oath to uphold the Constitution, thereby can hold a public office, whereas inhabitants just live in. Well, inhabitants, you're getting down to the technical minutia of definitions. We're all men created equal. As far as I understand, being a possession is not a state. Being a territory is not a state. To be real honest, I think they're part of our group just so we can kind of keep an eye on them and not let another major foreign power come, move in by our back door. But in my opinion, Puerto Rico either needs to be a state or they need to be turned loose. They're free people. They're no different than countries in South America or Africa, Asia or Europe. They need to take their place among the powers of the world and educate their people. They should have a constitution just like America has, a law of the land. Their people need to be educated just like our people need to. Common Core is taking care of that. Our kids haven't been educated to the Constitution in the recollection of men I know that are in their 80s and 90s. I show them some of this stuff and they say, where'd you get that? And then I show them the Constitution. They say, I never saw that. What we need to do is treat people as equals. What I'm trying to do will end this race problems. These groups that are trying to create race problems are committing warlike acts against this country. These people are on camera. We know them. They've been identified. They need to be brought to a military tribunal, exposed for their crimes, and let a jury of their peers deal with them in the future. Let's see here. This question ends with, whereas inhabitants just live and conduct their private business affairs. The United States, through its Constitution, was set up where all men are created equally, and the government couldn't sniff around in everything we did. The framers of the Constitution wrote about our currency. Don't mess with our currency. Don't copy it. That's the counterfeiting thing. They didn't want you. They wanted to prohibit the bribing of any of our elected officials. And then they wanted to deal with people committing warlike acts or people giving aid and comfort to people committing warlike acts. If you take a look at this, let's quit and conduct our private business. We should all be able to conduct our private business until it hurts somebody. I have particular feelings on certain subjects. The dealing in narcotics is one of them. I know people, maybe that have a high respect for them, but I'm around them quite a bit, that believe that's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Well, I don't care. I'm not their God. I'm not their conscience. I feel they should be able to do what they want. But if I catch them selling that stuff at the school and hurting somebody's child, I'll be the first to expose them. we should be able to conduct our private business matters until we start hurting others in our society. Then we have to have some reach to justice to deal with these folks. That's why we have trial by jury of our peers. I mean, it's not being honored, but there's a lot of simple things we can do as a group to take care of this. I don't know. I guess we only have the one question. I didn't hear Glenn chime in. He might have taken a break for a second. I don't know of the people that the screens that I have shown. If any of you have voice privileges, if not, you can type a message over here if you have a question. Ed, I'm going to let Glenn edit this down, take out the hems and the haws, and get this maybe on a YouTube video. I've given my name again is Jim Porter, and I live in Ridgeway, Colorado. If you're ever in town and want to visit, I'm easy to find. If you have any ideas on putting a group together, if you have any questions like this, one of the things I would like to not caution or warn other folks of, but when you ask a question, if you ask it in a self-centered, individualistic way, you're not part of the movement. I told you how I got into this by the taking of some private property, but I haven't harped on it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to expose all these people for the good of the people. When I get rid of them, I might be able to go back and deal with my personal individual problems. This Andrew didn't get real focused on I and my, but I caution folks, do this for the good of the people. Learn for the good of the people, educate for the good of the people, so that in the end, what's good for the people actually is achieved. We had a great country. We fought a civil war. I don't know why people back then, the Federalist Papers weren't published till 1820s. I guess people were so busy trying to earn a living, working their 12 and 14-hour days, they weren't paying attention to what was happening in the government in Washington, D.C., but we can go back to that. We can throw out, there's about 66 million federal codes is my last count, what I was told. Now, we can throw all those out and start over. We can start with the most important ones. Just so you know, the Obamacare gets thrown out. It was signed by a title holder without consent of Congress. That takes care of that problem in about 10 seconds. The Dodd-Frank Wall Street Consumer Protection Act thing of 2010, it gets thrown out, signed by a criminal. Trump could have drained the swamp. It would have been so easy to do. I could have had him, we'd have had to put the plug all the way back in to stop the sucking sound. Any of you people, I guess I don't have any more questions. Again, I've invited Glenn to step in here. If there's no more questions, I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. I was sitting here. Glenn, are you going to, in your comment section, if you get this on YouTube, maybe you can have people, have an avenue there where I can check in on that every now and then and answer some questions in a comment section. If you guys have any, want to have another one of these calls, get with Glenn and let him know. He'll holler at me. Bring up some subject matter that you're interested in or need more information on. I'll do my best to give you answers. If you notice, I've given you either, statements off of the computer, or I've shown you government documents for everything I presented tonight. That's been my goal the whole time that I've been doing this, is to use government information to prove the people's case. So, all right, I've got. I appreciate the comment on a great talk. Those are kind words for a 17-year-old battle, and I do appreciate it. It says something about talk to Glenn, and he'll be back in a few minutes. I've got some people that have got some volume. Apparently, they can ask questions if they want. I'll hush a minute, or I'll wait for some more typed questions or comments as we wait for Glenn to get back. Go ahead.
Jim?
Yeah.
What can we do about the idiots representing Satan, the IRS?
Okay, the IRS goes back to an amendment, correct? If you pull up the amendment, how you actually get rid of the IRS is you show the treason of the people that signed that into being. The IRS is unconstitutional. So is a lot of the incorporation tactics used by government employees. The Federal Reserve is unconstitutional. See if your name is on a list of stockholders. It won't be, so that's how you get rid of that. As far as your question on the IRS, what you have to do is you have to attack it at its origin. You prove the crime of treason against the people that put it into being. Once you remove their influence from any congressional acts, the IRS naturally goes away, and that subject can be readdressed for future generations. Once we get honest people in our Congress. Does that help any?
Oh yeah, there's the rub is the honest people in Congress.
Yep. Well, all of the bad stuff generally starts with legislation. And since 60% of the people in our legislative bodies, both at the federal and state legislature, since they're working for the Queen of England, we throw out everything that they've had anything to do with. And we go all the way back through the 40s and the 30s and the 20s and the teens. We'll get the IRS. We just set them aside. Readdress that subject in an honest manner.
Yeah. Thank you.
You bet. Well, let's see. I'm going to talk about this kind. It says, appreciate the research and your method for looking for the evidence. That's an important deal, folks. I learned years ago to take a government document, and if you don't understand something, ask yourself a question. One of the questions I asked years ago is, why does a perfectly good lawyer join the bar if he can already practice law? Well, if you take a look at your state statutes, you'll find that people can't hold government offices unless they're a member of the bar in good standing. Take a look at your attorney generals and your judges. There's state statutes added by title holders requiring future people to be members of the bar. It has nothing to do with the honor of the organization. It has to do with controlling its members of the crime syndicate. So, when you start to do research, you can't find the answer until you form the question properly. And once you form that question, don't deviate from it. If you want to understand let's use that document on slavery. If you want to understand the slavery amendment, we ought to find out who signed it. It goes back to Texas in their, you go back to their Judge Rusk, who was guilty of treason when he was a congressman back in the Deep South. Once you prove the background of the people associated with documents, you can actually null their actions. Somebody just made a comment, sounds like a monopoly and a restraint of trade. Well, those are the end results. The Queen of England, if you notice, the British people they don't really do anything or produce anything. Oh yeah, they make a few cars. There's some cars made over there, but how do they live the life of Riley and have 60% of their society on some kind of a government assistance when they don't really export anything? They're living off the backs of other people. This is what the king was doing back in the colonial days when we had taxation without representation. It's going on today. I don't know about it being a monopoly, and I don't know about it being a restraint of trade. which there is some of that going on. But what we have is we have an organized crime syndicate that has now been exposed, known as the International Bar, through their franchises of the American Bar and the state bars and the county bars, with members holding key positions throughout government corporations. In fact, incorporating is a British theory. What it does is it establishes persons, fake people without a heart or soul. And so it's actually the fraud. It's the government is these people holding these positions in government corporations with no heart or soul. Monopoly, restraint of trade, yeah, those are results, but that's not the main problem. We take care of the problem, and restraint of trade goes away. Okay, it sounds like a monopoly. Whoever, I don't have a name, but whoever wrote this Monopoly and Restraint of Trade was actually talking about the bar forced membership. Okay, this is John Maryland. I see how this is working now. There's a guy out there, John Maryland, that's part of this call, and I appreciate you, John. Then these questions. Membership is more than monopoly and restraint of trade. What it is it's a control mechanism over its members so that everybody marches to the same beat. You've got all of your state prosecutors under your attorney general. You have all your state judges who are in control of all your county prosecutors and county judges. Operating by a state statute is here in Colorado. They all belong to the bar. So that's their internal control mechanism. They can discuss policy at bar memberships that are, policies that are going to be carried out through government positions. One of the best examples of this is that Trey Gowdy several years ago was a member of our Congress when he went after Hillary. You remember how nice a young man he looked, and 3 years later, he looked like he'd been beaten with an ugly stick. His hair was thin, his face was haggard, and everything he turned gray. Well, the bar ran him through the ringer and told him to shut up and sit down and be quiet. They left him in place because they still needed that seat controlled by a bar member. But he was removed from several influential committees. Yeah, he tried to break ranks. It was at the federal level, but the bar membership is important so that the Queen, through the Tower of London and the International Bar, can keep control of these members that are actually making decisions in our government positions while they're also guilty of treason against the American people. I don't know all of the titles to all the different states, but I know I've read Colorado, and I've even been to the Secretary of State's office and talked to the Division on Elections to understand how all that works. And it was just a statute added by attorneys that if I ever get my way and we start to unwind this, that requirement for bar membership will actually disappear. John, I don't know if you're an attorney, and I don't really care. I'm not. I should be able to run for any state office authorized by the state constitution, but I'm not. All men are not created or treated equal. We've got another listener, his name is Jerry, ask a question. It says, how can D.C. be removed from our country in its entirety? Well, okay. And John's not an attorney or lawyer. I didn't think so. Let's get back to Jerry's question here just for a minute. Let me reread this. How can D.C. be removed from our country in its entirety? Well, it's in Article 1 that we're going to have someplace no larger than 10 miles square as the seat of our federal government. Now that's in Article 1 of the Constitution. That's in Article 1. Let let me get back to this mess here. Article 1. I can't remember if it's in Section 8. Privileges of the Senate House. Okay. I'm going to just pick one and go back. But anyway, about your question. I don't. The location can be changed to someplace other than Washington D.C., but there's going to be a place like Washington D.C. because it's in the Constitution. So, actually dealing with your question, removed from our country in its entirety, I don't see that how that's a possibility. Maybe you might have some thought to this current subject matter of making Washington, D.C. a state. Well, it goes back to being parts of other states, and I think that's unconstitutional if you take it all the way back to 1789 and 1790. That's going to, it's technically a moot point until we get the attorneys, the title holders out of our government position so honest people can actually debate this. This Andrew McCabe is thrown another question at me. This question is from a YouTube chat, and it's seriously sarcastic. What are you doing to start pulling these imposters out of office to charge them with treason? Well, what I'm doing is I'm taking my time this evening to educate at least one more person. This is my tact is similar to the story. Would you rather take $1 million today or a penny a day doubled for 30 days? Do the math. A penny a day doubled for 30 days is more than $1 million. This thing starts at a crawl. It starts with me helping one other person understand the law of the land. That person's probably got a relative or a co-worker, or friend, and we get 2, and then these get 4, and then we get 8. And, somebody out there is better at organizing a group than I am. I'm really good at researching evidence, and I might be a consultant to some professional group later on. But as far as what am I doing to start pulling these imposters out of office to charge them with treason, what I'm doing is I'm naming them for treason and asking for the American people's help to put an inferior tribunal together. We can't do it now with Biden. We couldn't do it with Trump. I wasn't able to do it with Obama. I didn't know about doing it under the Bush administration. I don't know about sedition, and I don't know about inciting riots. All I'm doing is telling the truth. And somewhere, conferences need to start. Conventions need to start. People need to start organizing at group levels. I'm open for that. I'm going to have to charge a fee to pay for my time, but somewhere along the line, we need to start educating the people so that eventually, when we need to exhibit some kind of a force, whether it's a force in group mass or more, we'll be educated and on the right side. We'll be on the side of law. I got John Merrill in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. I'd have to go back and review that one. Let's see here. 1-8-17. Well, I don't know which is 17. I'll find it. 30, 40, 50, 16, 17. Exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over this. Oh, this is about the District of Columbia. What this did is it just set aside an area to be no larger than 10 miles square over such a district, not to exclude not exceeding 10 miles square, as made by secession of particular states. We'll see it's that part of secession by particular states. Well, if you read the Constitution, one state can't be created out of other parts of several more than one state without congressional acceptance and authority. I don't remember the words. So whether you completely remove Washington D.C. and made it its own foreign nation, or you try to make it a state or do something else with it, it probably comes under another guideline in the Constitution about statehood. Let's see. This Andrew. Another question from the chat. What I've got is Andrew is monitoring the people on YouTube, funneling me questions. So we'll just stay here and answer as many as we can until the computer battery runs down and I'm plugged in. Another question from the chat, Avi May. How much do judges and commissioners get in kickbacks? Well, they get a commission on all cases successfully tried when fines are paid. I was on a lead that actually the officer writing the ticket or making the arrest gets a commission. It seems to have something to do with an account in the Federal Reserve that's more set up for retirement days. I got off onto that and somewhere got distracted. What I was doing is I was looking down a rabbit hole. It had a rabbit in it, but it wasn't an important rabbit. I will tell you this, that what we call police officers or deputies, we have police chiefs and sheriffs. These people are all sworn to support and defend the state and federal constitutions, and then they are sworn to be officers of the court, which makes them gives them concern for the safety of an individual guilty of treason. You know, a judge, the court, without consent of Congress. I've approached a few sheriffs on this, and they've admitted to me if this ever becomes public, it's going to blow the lid off of things. Yet they don't do anything about it. They're dishonest men that I've met. They're people they're sheriffs in the county that I live in, and a police chief. So, you know, they're officers of the court. They're there to protect the court. They're there to generate paperwork, cases. Each case involves a judge and two attorneys, and they all get part of the fine. It's called money in motion. It's how they pay for their for a mistress or a second vacation home or a yacht or, you know, whatever they spend their money on. But it's seriously, it's part of how they make a living. You look at these guys and their little judge salaries and then look at their lifestyle, it doesn't match. And we got a listener somewhere on YouTube called Seriously Sarcastic. I didn't mean you personally. I just wanted to know if we have an organization to start the process. He's talking about exposing these imposters and charges with treason. Well, I'm looking for that group myself, seriously. I never take offense to any questions that people ask. Sometimes they lead to investigating for a better answer. To be real honest, I don't know of a group that started this. I know of a group ran by a guy named Dan and his wife Kara down in Texas. They're talking about using peaceful legislative actions to remove the state of Texas from the federal union. Well, the first thing is you're not going to be able to do it with a peaceful legislative action. I've tried to warn them about it, and they've shut down on me, and they don't reply back to any of my messages. So I guess what they're doing is they're taking advantage of their 300,000 members, paying them $17 a year, and they're living off the income. I haven't found an honorable group that's actually willing to put their neck out and be recorded and publicized to deal with people like Ted Cruz and Greg Abbott and Barack Obama and his wife Michelle, or the Clintons. You know, I'm calling out some important people. So anybody's got the cojones to help me, well, let's put a group together. I got Ava May. Thank you. He says, my girlfriend used to bartend at a pub close to the courthouse and the judges and commissioners talking about their kickbacks. Well, here we have got, and it's through third-hand information, which I believe is true. We've got a lady that's talking about judges and their kickbacks. Well, what I ask is the listeners, look into the Federal Reserve, the Corporation of the Federal Reserve, see if they're still incorporated down out of Puerto Rico, and then try to demand a list of stockholders. You want to find out who's in control of what? Find out who the stockholders of the corporation are. United States Inc. Find out the list of stockholders for USA Inc. or State of Colorado Inc. or State of Illinois Inc. or State of California Inc. See if you're on the list of stockholders. You want to know who's in control? It's in the key is the people listed as stockholders. Look at your courthouses. Those are owned by the Bar Association. You can go to your tax records and find out, who the registered owner of the property is. That will frost you too. Do the same with your county judges. We got a thing from Sage 2470. Hope he gives his contact info again. Well, my name is Jim Porter, Porter. I live in Ridgway, Colorado. And there's no E in Ridgway, Ridgway. It's Ridgway, Colorado, and the zip code is 81432. If you're ever around, I'm easy to find. As far as the phone number goes, I'm working 100 hours a week on a mine. I'm off. I took today and tomorrow off. I don't have time to answer a phone. As far as contacting me, I think the best way we could do this would be for the people to follow this Glenn's YouTube channel. This is going to be a long video. It's going to be a 3-hour talk. Most people, they lose interest after 10 minutes. Hopefully this works. People should leave a comment. Let me come back and look when I have time, answer a few questions. And this is a very, very good, this is a question that leads to a monster problem. It talks about my contact information. Folks, somebody out there has got to be able to, they got to know more about running an organization than I do. There's got to be a half a dozen people that could put a group together. Invite me to be a part of the group. One of the things I've always had in mind is starting my own website. I was going to charge $1.48 a month, like on these podcasts, for annual memberships. And I was going to list documents that I have. I don't have time on this call. I was going to talk about definitions, but what I was going to do is put this website together. I have to have my own computers, a private service. I can backdoor this through other internet hosting sites, but it's going to be very expensive. But I was going to do it as a form of income. Anybody wants to be a part of that, it's going to be about $60,000 startup, which I don't have. You want to talk about contact information? Sage says he's in Black Forest, Colorado. I don't know about Black Forest, but I'll look it up. The deal is anybody wants to put a group together, reach out to somebody else. Leave me a message. Leave Glenn a message. If I'm not answering messages on this on his YouTube channel in the comment section for this video, Glenn looks at this stuff. Message him. If you've got something important like that in the funding and the people to put a group together, an honest group willing to actually get something done, I'll jump into that with both feet. I don't know how to answer other than I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, but I'll promise you this. If there's 1.2 million attorneys in this country, if we had 1.2 million people in a group as a membership thing, and we could expose the fraud of the media. Did you know our media corporations are actually owned by out of country interests? That's another one. Look up the UPI and the API and find out who actually owns those corporations. that one will frost you. The Reverend Moon used to own one of them. I don't remember which one now. But take a look at putting something together. I'm not a one-man team. This is gonna take a group effort. What we need to do is somehow start a big organization, and then we need to have people trained to work at smaller levels, maybe at the state, then the county, then the local city or town levels, where we can educate the people to what our public education system isn't providing. We do this in the next 2 or 3 years. I've had people say, well, why don't you be president? Well, that's one thing, but I don't have the money to do it, and I don't have the team behind me to get it done. We get somebody in our lead offices that understands the Constitution, knows how to use military tribunal, call his military officers into tribunal to listen to criminal charges of treason. That's how you get it done. I don't know if I'm the right guy to do it. So, okay, I'm going to look at this. There's a question from a man, I guess, Forrest Walker. What about American States Assembly? Forrest, give me a little more information on that. Shoot me a quick message real quick. Narrow that down. Let's see. What about American States Assembly? I don't know if that's, just so you know, I don't know if that's some kind of a type of group, or if that's some new movement that I haven't heard about. So again, I'm going to have to wait for your clarification on that. It's a compact. Well, I don't know. Let me think about that. Okay. And he's right. He said the original United States was unincorporated, which is true. If you study the theory of incorporation, it actually comes from British common law, and what it is, and it goes on today. It's a human being trying to protect their self and their assets from liability. I'm going to give you this example. It'd be like Trump starting a business where he knows somebody's going to get killed, like raising a high building and somebody falling off the 80th floor. What he does is he determines, okay, it's going to be $200 million, and I'm just picking numbers. He dedicates a portion of his net worth, his wealth, into this corporation. Then he hides as a stockholder so that when somebody falls off the building and die, it's a person. Look at the definitions of people and person. A person has a heart, a soul, and a conscience. A person is an inanimate object with no heart or soul or conscience, and that's a corporation. Granted, we are a nation of people that in the 1870s, and the kick for hiding behind the protection of corporations started with our government. The easiest way to stop that is by locating the document. I don't care which one it is, which state. You look at the signatures of the men that signed it, and you prove their treason. When they don't have the consent of Congress, you throw out the incorporating document, and you go back to a state of the people. You want a compact? I'm not familiar with how the word compact actually works and fits into this. I'll take your word for it. I don't really care. What technically all states are foreign to each other. If you take a globe and you have a little bitty pen and you put a spot on it, represent Washington, D.C., that's a foreign nation. And you put spots for all the 13 states. Those were all foreign nations united. You can call it a compact if you have to have a definition, but it was a uniting of states under a common law, a constitution. Okay, we are living with the counterfeit corporation charter. Well, that's true. It's the charter that was written by attorneys, title holders, employees of the Queen of England. So let's change it. We agree on the same thing. Let's see here. There's not a whole lot more to be said about that. If you study the this thing about incorporating, you go back to 1871. And, everybody goes back to that. It was when the wreck happened. Well, the wreck happened with the Bill of Rights, and that happened because we let John Adams into the vice presidency and the presidency of the Senate when he didn't have consent of Congress, and that happened the first day this government started operating. This goes back to the very origins of our government. So what we need to do is we need to go back and take care of old business that was done wrong. Expose these people. You can't dig them up and try them for treason once they're dead. There's a thing in there, you can only do it when they're alive. But what we need to do is we need to remove all the actions that these treasonous people left behind. We need to throw them in the trash. And the people today are smart enough to readdress these subjects. We can vote on whatever we need to vote on. And it gets back to another thing I was telling you. Texas is not a state of the union. There was a Judge Rusk. He was a bar member, so when he signed the documents, you throw him out. He's part of the Enabling Act. He's part of all sorts of things. Texas was required to actually as collateral for the French loan for the Union to start and fight the South in the Civil War. I got all documents on that. But the thing is this was all done through the treasonous acts of people that shouldn't have been in government. What we can do is we can go back, things that Lincoln did. Lincoln was one of the greatest treasonous assholes our country ever produced. He wasn't the greatest guy. He didn't fix slavery. He signed a slavery amendment. Hell, we've all been enslaved since his days. What we need to do is go back to the 3 laws of the land. We need to get rid of the common law in the 7th Amendment. We need to get rid of this incorporation that protects human beings through fictitious persons. What we need to do is we need to reestablish accountability. If somebody's going to send somebody into danger and somebody gets killed, well, somebody else needs to be responsible for that. They need to be accountable. They need to be able to give reasons for their actions. We had Hillary dead to rights, on her server and on her cell phones, on her lack of caring for those men in Benghazi, and her lack of communication with then Obama. To be real honest, these people were never inaugurated by an honest Supreme Court justice. Even Trump, he was technically by the Constitution, never president. He only achieved the rank president-elect through the Electoral College. John Roberts is guilty of treason. You throw out the inauguration, Trump was never president. But what we have to do is we have to expose these people and these actions so that we understand the truth. The history is recorded by the victors, where right now the Bar Association has been victorious. When the people become the victors, we straighten all this out and expose the truth. What we can do is we can prevent these situations from happening again. Did we ever need Americans in Benghazi? What is Benghazi important for? What were we protecting in Benghazi? Nothing. And why were we there? Those people shouldn't have been killed in the first place. They shouldn't have been there in the first place. They shouldn't have. We had an ambassador and some security guards killed. That should have never happened. The simple solution, it goes back to the 3 crimes: treason, bribery, and counterfeiting. You don't mess with our elected people. You don't mess with our currency. And if you work for another government or a foreign leader, you don't work for us without warning. And that's what this application for consent of Congress is actually about. You write a letter notifying the Congress that the people, they scream and holler about a double agent. Well, that's really what you are. But what you're doing is you're notifying this government that you work for another one somewhere else. But the people in your district actually elected you to hold a certain position. And so, we'll deal with all that one at a time. Glenn's back. We've been on this call for over 3 hours. Maybe he's ready to conclude it. The questions that slow down, Glenn. I had some good questions, too. I made a comment that maybe you and I together can work on watching the comment section on a YouTube video when you get it uploaded. People are asking about, maybe for different questions, or can a group be started? I made some comments on that. We'll see how this turns out, and maybe people will think and have additional questions. We do another call. Maybe I can answer them in your comment section. We're just going to have to play this one every day by ear.
Yeah, I'm looking on the YouTube chat, and there's not really any questions there. A lot of comments, but no questions.
Yeah. Well, probably half of them think I'm a nut. I don't know. But I've appreciated the time. I've appreciated the people hanging in here with me. I guess if we don't have any more questions, we'll just let everybody soak this in and go to bed. What do you think, Glenn?
Yep, that's fine. I appreciate your knowledge, and it's I'm looking forward to. I had to step away briefly, but it wasn't. Anyways, that's probably the best thing to do. It's up on YouTube. It's live streamed to YouTube, so people can go back and listen to it on YouTube.
Okay. And any of the people that listen, if you got any ideas, if you got any serious questions, try to get us to plan another call. If you give me a week, I'll send off to Washington, D.C. or wherever and try to find the documents to support whatever questions and answers we have on the next call. Glenn, thanks for your time.
All right. Thank you, Jim.
All right. Good night.
Good night.